Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Takeover Tuesday podcast. I'm David Allen, and we're back with part 2 of our interview with the Toecracker, copywriter Trevor Crook. Let's just jump right back in.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. You hear that, people? Go freelancewritersecrets.com and check out his course. And it comes, with some a little bit of mentoring and some sales critiques. And for the beginning copywriter, that's a godsend, I would say, because you don't get that with many courses, I don't think.
No, and the 6 months worth of
in the Skype, and stuff.
Skype and email support. So if you've got a quick question that you're not sure, send me. I normally respond to stuff within 24 hours. And of course, my coverall email is just toecracker@gmail.com. And, happy to answer any questions. And, I've sort of done that for a few people through the group that we're in. Privately, they've asked me questions. I've jumped on a Skype just to straighten a few people out. And it seems to be helping. And, it's, I just enjoy doing it, pure and simple.
Hey, you can tell. Now, you got the moniker Toecracker for, I presume, because I haven't heard this story yet, but I'm presumed for giving people a kick in the ass. But you may want to elaborate on where this came from.
Yeah, that's very true. And the chrome-tipped pointed shoes are an after effect, but they tie in well.
For those who haven't seen yet, he's got a picture of his fancy pointed shoes on his profile. Yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes get triple X-rayed when I'm going through airport security to see that they're not a weapon. So far, I've managed to get through every time. But back in 2000, really, when I was transitioning from my broking business, but doing a bit of sort of consulting to my business broking clients on marketing strategies. I was working with this client, and they had there was two companies, and the parent company, the sister company was sort of raping the profits out of the main company. So much so that they didn't have any working capital. They had a $900,000 hardcore overdraft with zero fluctuation. And so, with my banking hat on, I told them what I thought, because I used to do a lot of real complex lending, back in my banking days. And so I told them what I thought, and then sort of pointed out some what I thought were obvious areas that they could improve on. And then I left them with a marketing tip that I'd learned, in either in one of the manuals or one of the cassettes that I'd listened to on a package I'd previously got. And people won't kick up a fuss and still be clients. And that money goes straight to your bottom line. It's cream. And that was pretty much it. We'd finished a little deal that we'd agreed to. And then I sort of got into copywriting, 2001. And it was about a year later, I get this letter from one of the partners, and he's just, it's a testimonial letter thanking me for pointing out the juvenile ways and our Mondays, better at work. And thanks to your Toecracker style, we've done, we're no longer in the red. And the dollar amount wasn't put in the letter, but I got that from him later. And I was thinking, I want to be a copywriter. Yeah, I think Toecracker just suits. That's my style. Say what I think. But nothing's ever personal, But it just, so now, people, when they know they're going to get a critique or mentored, they've already called their own bluff. It's like, don't Toecrack me too hard, or thanks for the Toecracking, because you're showing a little bit of tough love.
Right.
And because what I found, and I'm not sure, if you do any mentoring or stuff yourself, but what I find is, particularly for when I'm mentoring copywriters, most of the time it's the head game that I'm playing with, that I'm working on. Getting them outside their comfort zone, playing with the head game, getting that straight, and then teaching them to position themselves better. And actually, one thing I forgot to mention before, which is very critical to anyone that's starting out as a copywriter, or you are a seasoned copywriter, if you're not doing a decent proposal, right, when you're offering your copywriting services, you're leaving a truckload of money on the table. It's got to be a sales letter. Like my proposal for copywriting / and/or mentoring is 18 pages long, right? Because people need to know why the bloody hell they should invest with you, and you need to be able to show them the proof. You know, and just recently, a guy that I was been mentoring for a while, you know, when he started last year, within the first 3 months, it actually took 6 weeks, but he went from doing a 3-page proposal to following my method. He had the copy chops on the board. He had the runs on the board. He just wasn't selling the skills enough. He was able to double his fees within that time. Right. And then even recently, you know, he's still up there in his fees. We had discussed a proposal. I looked at the proposal before it went to his client, and I got him an extra $3.5 grand on that deal just by looking at it. You know, but your proposal is key. If you're just getting on a call with somebody, having a face-to-face, having a Skype, and sprouting out fees without doing a proper proposal, you are costing yourself sales. I never ever reveal fees on a call face-to-face with anybody. It's all done proposal basis, you know. Even a few years ago when I was flown, I was in the US and I was flown in to meet with a very successful weight loss company. And I mean, these boys they'd done $125 million in sales in 2010. So it wasn't chicken feed. Sitting there, want to know my fees, and I said, no, I need to think about it and give you a proposal. And sadly for me, they wouldn't agree to a royalty deal, or we wouldn't be talking. I would own my own island in the Bahamas, because they went to 400+ million in 2 years, based on the copy that I was just hired gun, beat the control, rewrite all around advertising and their infomercial script, you know. But it was the proposal, you know, and it wasn't a small fee, you know. But that's what you have to do when you're starting off, right? Or if you're doing it, look at your proposal, because I can just about guarantee you your proposal is weak and you're leaving thousands of dollars every time you do a proposal.
Right. There's very good information right there. And do you have any resources that you'd recommend? I mean, besides yourself, I mean, how did you acquire this? Through just trial and error? Did you have any sort of books you want to recommend or stuff about this particular thing?
Copywriting in general, you mean?
Yeah, or just this aspect of it, the proposals, or how you sell your services, your sort of value-based stuff, I guess.
Well, the proposals were just something I developed myself over time. But just think of it as, if you're going to write a sales letter for one of your clients to sell their services, right, swap them out for and your own services, and think in the third party and write about that. A lot of people find it hard to write about themselves, you know, or, you know, sales letter, sell their own products, etc., etc. But just, you know, I mean, my format's pretty simple. I start off with, you know, thanking for the discussion, reiterating some of the conversation we've had, giving them reasons why they, you know, need to hire me, back it up with proof, facts, you know, between testimonials and known facts to the copy that you've gotten for your clients in the past. You do your offer some sort of guarantee, and limit the offer, and just make sure it's literally a proper sales letter. But in terms of, I mean, part of what I have been using for about the last 5 years, I had a template that I used from the beginning up until about 2011. I decided to write a new one, and there's a book called, I think it's from Julian Watkins, The 100 Greatest Advertisements and What Made Them Pay, from 1800 and something like that. Yeah. I can get you the exact title.
Okay, cool.
And it's like a $10 book. But it's got a lot of the old classic adverts in there and letters, one page adverts. But where the gold is in that book is it gives you a description or commentary about each campaign. Most people know, for example, David Ogilvy's, Rolls-Royce headline. Well, the full advert's there. What most people don't know, that was his 104th headline.
Right.
Was tested, which is why, and I learned this from Ted, if you're starting out, you need to do at least 150 headlines, right? And it gives you the full explanation, but there was one particular one-page advert in there called Find the Man. And it was an advertising agency calling out to people back in, from 1924 to 1948, I think, for people spending more than $100,000 a year on advertising, an open invitation to have a chat to these people. And it was all about Find the Man. Such and such a business owner was just trying to do this, they got this result because they found the man. And I adapted that. And it's worked very well, because you can take your testimonials and use these additional bullet points to ram home how good your services have been, and it does help close deals. But I mean, that book has sort of been I'm not religious, but I have two sort of copywriting advertising Bibles, right? That is one of them. And prior to that, and I still have it, but the first one was called Tested Sentences That Sell by Elmer Wheeler.
Elmer Wheeler, Tested Sentences That Sell, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people know the phrase, sell the sizzle, not the steak. They may have heard of Elmer Wheeler. They've never heard of the book. When you've got a 10-year word laboratory study testing 105,000 sentences, phrases on 19 plus million people, there's gold in those pages. All right. Some of the old school stuff is just, it's just priceless. I mean, many of the old school books and stuff and references. I would definitely recommend those two, in addition to, other stuff that you may or may not already have.
Yeah, I think I got started with some of the old school stuff. I read the Ogilvy stuff, of course, but I think the Collier Letter book, the Caples, several of the Caples books, Claude Hopkins, of course.
Yeah. If you got time for a quick story on the
yeah, absolutely,
the damaged stock run letter.
Okay.
So I'm sure you're familiar with that, and many of your audience may be familiar with it. Robert Collier. So back in 2006, I did I was traveling. I stupidly decided to run a 10-part sort of tele-seminar at the time on copywriting, and I was doing it in all sort of parts of the world in different people's houses. So, there was a lot of background noise, no editing, but, it went very well, and people, got good testimonials out of it. People got results. And so I just thought, well, why can't I do a damaged stock run letter for an audio product? Why not? All right.
Why not? Yeah.
So I banged off an email to my list, and I just explained why it was damaged, in effect. I go, yeah, it was done on the fly. There's some background noise. You might hear the dog fart, but I don't have a dog, and all sorts of stuff like that,
Right.
And put a special offer out, it was at half price or something like that. And I can't remember the exact numbers, David, but, it sold quite well. And then in 2009, I was telling that story, the full version on stage at a guy's event in Vancouver. And when I got off stage, someone came up to me and he goes, "Yep, I actually bought that." He just loved it. I was like, well, it obviously, because you can come up with any reason for a sale, right?
Yeah, as long as you have a reason. Yeah.
You have a reason, and it was true. I mean, there was some background noise. The content was good, but there was some rough noise, and I'm not technical, so I wouldn't know how to edit that stuff. And so, I just thought damaged stock run letter worked back then. It's worked in physical product. I don't see why it can't work for an audio, digital version. And it did, So, I like testing old school strategies like that. A lot of people were familiar with the Wall Street Journal. But I mean, did you know that that's a knockoff of a public domain letter?
Yeah, I know. I did know that actually because I've delved into some of that really history of some of the direct response marketing and stuff from my own knowledge, and I was aware that that was not that letter, which became so famous, has been knocked off, was knocked off originally.
Yeah, in public domain, there's got some great stuff in there. But I mean, sometimes, I'll get some, writers, even seasoned, or they get to write for a product that their client really knows two-thirds of stuff all about, really, what they're doing. So they find it hard to write the story. And there are times where the Wall Street Journal model just works. And, for myself, I've used it for erection device. That was a funny story, a funny sales letter like that one.
I bet. Two
Yeah.
with I can just
Product
see
with
it.
a 96% satisfaction rate too. That orgasm travel. When I wrote the guitar sales letter, just that part of the story worked very well in the sales copy. I've used it for farming. People go, farmers won't respond to direct mail. I go, bullshit, they won't respond. We all get out of bed, we all get in the shower naked unless you're some sort of weirdo. It's only when we start our work or put our uniform on that we take on that role or position. At the end of the day, unless our brains have changed in the last couple of 100 years, we're human beings and we respond to emotional triggers. So why wouldn't it work? And so I'm a big fan of studying the old stuff and seeing how you can adapt it, or taking something that's worked for one particular niche and following the formula and making it work in something completely, chalk and cheese and what it was intended for, in the first place.
Yeah, because there's an underlying structure there that's proven.
Yeah, I mean, I took a letter I wrote for a builder years ago, or a guy selling a building security device, I should say, back in 2004, that worked very well for him. I wrote him effectively a two-page letter, and it worked well. The structure, the way it was written, it really was able to tap into the emotional triggers of his ideal target market. And I used that same structure to write a two-page letter to generate enough leads to raise more than $4 million on a small float on the Australian Stock Exchange. And that letter was mailed to the same database of investors that had previously not responded to that particular business's own copy. All right. But victory for them, yeah, but it was just, it was completely, that letter was written to target building site theft initially, but it worked exceptionally well. I can just model that, and this will work perfectly for here. I could see the swap outs of, take this piece out of the jigsaw and put that piece back in, and then fine tune it, make it flow, and give it a crack, and and it worked.
Now, when it comes to stuff like this, like you mentioned earlier, for sort of newbies starting out and they find some adverts, a lot of which are very poorly written, which you find locally and so forth. What are sort of if you had to, in your experience, come across, what are sort of 3 quick things that you see people just fuck up all the time?
When writing copy?
Yeah, like they're writing it for themselves. Business owners and stuff that it seems to repeat, but I'm sure you have some thoughts.
Yeah, the first thing I see business owners do is they're so in love with their business name and their logo / brand. Now, my theory is you may as well brand your logo on your ass, because it's got a much effect. Right? And because, again, unless you as a business owner can get 100 people into a room, play word association about your product or service, and 80% of those people say, yeah, Joe Blow's business, your logo means diddly squat. It only strokes your ego, right? And same as your business name. That's a big mistake. You can still have your business name and your logo, but put it down the bottom of any marketing that you're doing. You know, you need that compelling headline which draws people in to read further about whatever your product or service is. Right? That's number one. Number two, in terms of websites, you know, you know this yourself, but I mean, you've got to be able to try and get people to opt in to get on some sort of database with you, some sort of mailing list.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that I went to a meetup. You know, meetup.com hosts all sorts, and this is another maybe tip for people out there. I went to a meetup for the first time yesterday, because most of the stuff I've done has been online and so forth. But I was curious because I travel like you, and I'm in New Orleans for a good chunk of time usually. So I thought, man, I should really just go meet some of these local business people. You never know what's going to happen. And a lot of them just have no way, they haven't thought about it or any way to collect people's contact information. You know, they just, I met several people at the meeting that just don't do that, period. How are you going to keep marketing to people if you don't have their information?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, years and years ago, you know, I went to, you know, the old breakfast club, you know, meet once a week type thing, and did that for a little while. And so the first time I go, everyone stands up and, you know, I'm Joe Blow's Plumbing and I'm Pete the Printer and, you know, I'm, you know, Slimy the real estate salesman, etc., etc.
Right.
You know, I just listen to all these people, and I stood up and I said, you know, like, none of you in your little elevator speech said anything of interest, right? There's no benefit, no wow factor of what you do, right? I said, from your business card and everything above, it's like me saying I'm a copywriter. Most people don't know what the bloody hell a copywriter
they don't know what that is. Yeah.
Right? So you've got to state the benefit from it. So then I told them a little, an adjusted version of something I'd learned from, you know, somebody else. And I said, you know, imagine we're at a party and they come up to me and they say, hey, Toecracker, what do you do? And I go, I'm a bus driver. Yeah, pretty boring and so what statement. And they come up to you, Dave, and they go, what do you do? And you say, I safely transported 1 million people over the harshest roads in America last year without an accident. All right. Wow. All right. How did you do that? What do you do? I'm a bus driver. All right. Whose bus are you going to get on? You're not getting on mine. Right. You're going to get on yours. So, you know, so as a business owner, think about the first thing that pops out of your mouth when people say, what do you do? Because saying you're a plumber or, you know, saying you're this or saying you're that really is not enticing to people. Give them a benefit of what they get from doing business with you or from the service that you provide. That in itself can certainly help you. Because I remember when I first started, I mean, when I started my brokerage business, I did what everybody else did. I needed to go to a printer. So I go to a printer and I've got all these albums of different business cards and letterheads and stationery. And okay, well, I like the look of that. It all was the same sort of dribble, you know. Headline was the business name and then the logo was there, right? So if they even improve those little things, right, you can do half the battle. And also, you know, follow up. I mean, so many people don't follow up with their clients. I mean, if you don't understand the lifetime value of your clients and you haven't bothered to work it out, you need to, because that should change the perception of how you look at each new client. You know, an example, again, years ago, I was mentoring a client in Canada, and she was provided bookkeeping services, right? Not an accountant, provided bookkeeping services, and her average client was about, you know, $1,000 a month. And, you know, by the time we got to, you know, sorting through stuff and working at the lifetime value, most of her clients were worth about $100,000 to her. She kept them 10 years. Go figure.
Right.
right? So it's like, well, you know the type of client that you like to do this work for. You know they stay with you on average 10 years and they're worth at least $100,000 to you in gross. What are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to invest to get your ideal customer, knowing if you can get them on board the first time and you continue to provide the service that you do, they're going to be worth about 100 grand to you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Not just, oh, it's just $1,000 a month, you know. Changes the mentality big time for most people.
Absolutely, yeah, because then you know what you can afford to
So,
spend to get them.
yeah, if you're selling anything, any product or service as a business owner, right, you really need to be looking at and working out what the lifetime value is. Now, if you offer different products or services, you may have some different figures depending on the type of client, and that's okay, but work it out.
Yeah, I think one of the things I remember, and you can probably correct me if I'm wrong about this, but if my memory serves me, and occasionally it does, I I remember that you had a very, and I think this is where I learned it. It was from you. You had a very distinct sort of question, a series of like a half dozen or so questions on profiling the target customer.
Yes.
Those were very helpful, and that's something I've told other business owners and so forth that I've worked with and for, is how to narrow down the demographic that is the sort of 80-20 of the people who are buying your shit.
Yeah, it's basically, profiling is huge. I mean, for when I start the copywriting process, I mean, first thing, to do is work out the offer. If you don't know what the actual bloody offer is, it's really hard to start writing a headline, and you need to profile your ideal customer. And so, as an example, and here's the first 4 questions. I think there's about 11 that I go through, 11 or
Okay.
12. But I mean, for you listening, right? So, I'd critiqued a 2-page flyer for a client in the UK years ago who was offering Tai Chi classes, Tai Chi lessons. And the first question I asked him was, who are you selling to? Male or female? Now, his answers were fairly flippant. It was like, I was the idiot. Go figure. And I was like, oh, women, of course. I go, okay. Do you know what percentage roughly? Just an approximate for now. And he was, yeah, it's about 80%. So already in 2 questions, I knew that 80% of his paying customer, were women. Next question, do you know roughly what their age demographic is? Are they, 25 to 35, 35, 45, 45, 55 type thing? And I think it was 35 to 45. So 3 questions, I know that 80% of his buying/paying customers are women aged between 35 to 45, or whatever the figure was. And then I said, okay, and what's the number one reason they come for Tai Chi? And he was straight away, oh, stress relief. And so in 4 simple questions, basically that the profile was built, And I said, there's no mention of any of this in the 2-page flyer/letter you wrote for me to critique. So imagine changing the headline to attention women aged 35 to 45 who want stress relief.
Right. Done for you.
And then adjusting the copy to your ideal target market. And that's really all it has to be. Rather than guessing, you really want to dig deep and know who is buying from you. Now, these days, even with Facebook and the like, if you have a Facebook page, you can get a fairly good understanding of who's opting into your page, et cetera, et cetera. Like in my page, The International Lifestyle, it's 40, but predominantly women, and between the ages of 25 to 54, it's about almost an even split. But I think it's 58% of my audience are women. I'm actually happy about that.
Yeah. I'd be
but,
too.
I know who I can target.
Awesome. Well, those
Yeah,
are really cool.
profiling is king. You know, I mean, if you've ever watched CSI Miami or Las Vegas, I mean, you know, the format's the same. They start off with a murder scene. They've got a dead body somewhere. You know, they probe, they build, they find the killer. This is no different. You got to really profile who your ideal customer is, and if you have a database, you know, and if you haven't done, you should survey them. I mean, when I wrote that sales letter for the guitar membership site a couple of years ago, they had surveyed. They knew the age of the customers that were buying, right? From the surveys, I got all the language I needed to be able to turn those into selling points. Yeah. I mean, you know, so it's, you know, it's being able to, you as a business owner or writer, being able to get the benefit out of whatever it is that your product or service offers, you know, to get people to, you know, to part with cash / credit card. The profiling is very, very important.
Awesome. Well, man, that those are some great tips. You have really dropped all sorts of knowledge on our listeners here today. That is spectacular.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a real ride. So if people are trying to get in contact with you, they should go to freelancewritersecrets.com.
Yeah, or that's where they can opt in and get on my list. Or if they have a question, feel free to, you know, email me at toecracker@gmail.com. That catches all my email addresses. Or if that for some reason, that's pretty easy. It's TOECRACKER, and happily answer your questions for you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one of your, because usually when I do research on the guests coming in, I usually go and try and find all the opt-in stuff I can and whatnot. Now, one of the things you sent me, and we'll leave this as a bit of a cliffhanger. You don't really have to talk about it. Is this lobster report that I got in my email from you. For anyone who goes and finds that, is that on Toecracker or is that on the?
That's on toecracker.com. Yeah.
Okay. So anyone who's interested, there's a great report that Trevor has on Toecracker.com that you get for opting in, and basically it's these lobstermen, who sort of created a whole new model within the lobster business. Basically, is what I'll say about it, which can give business owners all sorts of ideas for how they can set themselves apart.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and there's plenty like that. So yeah, leave it as a cliffhanger, but it's definitely worth getting. It's you know, I go back even from time to time and just read that just to, you know,
Yeah,
just to refresh.
yeah, it's really cool, and it really says a lot of good things about going the extra mile and stuff to provide what people are really looking for.
Well, they were no longer just lobster fishermen, were they? You know.
Exactly. Well, thanks a lot, Trevor, for coming on the show. It's been amazing. I'm so glad we connected. Finally.
I appreciate you having me on the show, David. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. For everybody listening, of course, we always like to thank Ben Sound at bensound.com for the intro and outro music and his free royalty-free tracks you can find on the website, bensound.com. And we'll be back next week with another exciting guest. Hopefully they'll be as good as Trevor. All right, have a good one. Good one, everybody.
See you, mate. Bye.